This is the PR Podcast, a show about how public relations helps you tell your story to the world. We talk with great PR practitioners who have the skills, creativity, and just plain savvy to get their clients noticed. Now here's your host, Jody Fisher.
Hey, everyone, and welcome to the PR Podcast. I'm Jody Fisher. Thanks for joining us. Well, as we're taping this, we are bracing for the bomb cyclone here on Long Island and in the Northeast. It's funny. These storms all have names now, and forecasters just want you to strap yourself to the TV and not let go. And everyone's running out to buy bread and milk. And, by the time this thing drops on Monday morning, the bomb cyclone will be a thing of the past. But nevertheless, we are totally bought in the Northeast as we tape this to the fact that we're getting a pretty healthy winter snowstorm here. So we're going to have some fun with it this weekend. Top of the show plug this week goes to Tanya McKenzie and her weekly Tea Time podcast that she hosts over on LinkedIn. She does this on Monday nights, and this is a live show. This is not taped like the PR Podcast and so many others. This is a live show on LinkedIn on Monday nights at 7 p.m. Tanya, who has been a guest on our show before, and she's also the host of the weekly PR Lunch Hour on Twitter Spaces, which we have also plugged in the past. Great resource there for us PR people if you want to tune in there noon on Fridays on Twitter. But today we are plugging her Tea Time show on Monday nights at 7 o'clock on LinkedIn. Check Tanya McKenzie out on LinkedIn, follow her and listen to that show. It's really terrific. I've been a guest there as well. And I don't say it just because I've been a guest. It's a really terrific resource. So check her out. If you want to get plugged at the top of the hour or the top of the show here on the PR Podcast, there's my radio coming out on me again. Send us a DM to the PR Podcast on Twitter, and we will mention you in an upcoming episode. It's a great way to get your product out to other people. And it's what we do here. We promote ourselves. We promote other people in our community. We share tips and tools, and we make what we do for a living just a little bit better. Now let's get on to our guests. We got a great one. Let's get right into it. Paul Furiga is president and chief storyteller of WordWrite, Pittsburgh region's largest independent public relations agency. His book, Finding Your Capital S Story, talks about the importance of storytelling in business. Before his PR career, Paul spent 2 decades as a journalist covering Congress, the White House, 4 presidential nominating conventions. He was also an aide to U.S. Senator Paul Simon of Illinois and issues director for his 1988 presidential run. We're going to have a lot to talk about today. So, Paul, welcome to the PR Podcast.
Hey, Jody. Thanks a lot for having me. It's great to be here.
Thank you so much. All right. So right away, why the tuba? And what is Alice Cooper really like? See, I read your bio.
You did, man. Now, we'll give people my company's URL later so they can go read a little bit more about that. Why the tuba? Because in 7th grade, instead of being assigned to chorus, I got assigned to band, and they didn't have anybody to play the tuba.
Very good.
That's the beginning of the story. The end of the story there is that I actually got quite good at the instrument. I studied with a guy in the symphony, and I actually played all the way through college, not as a music major, but by the time I was a senior, I had music majors telling me to stop auditioning for things because they needed the credits to play in the orchestra and stuff. And I didn't think about that. I just liked to play. It wasn't, I'm not a clueless individual. I'm not egotistical or self-centered, but I just like to play. And it was like, there's not a lot of tuba players around, Jody. So every orchestra only has one usually. So
yeah, and you are, but you are classically trained. I mean, you are.
Yes, I am.
You are not just a sort of basement garage jam guy the way I am. You are really good at it.
Well, I am now. I play other instruments. I've played in bands over the years, primarily electric bass, rock, country, blues. So yeah, but music's a lot of fun. Us creative types, we have to have more than one outlet. We can't just go around naming bomb cyclones.
And
our friends in the weather business.
It's interesting you bring that up because on the one hand, creativity, right? Sort of bringing up the fact that music is a creative outlet, but it's also I'll stretch here a little bit and call it a fact-based outlet. Like, you got to play the right notes at the right time. You got to do the
Well,
right thing, right? And that is PR relatable as well, is it not? It's sort of good
yeah,
training.
it is. Now I'm going to say something that's probably going to turn off most of our PR colleagues. When our kids played, our daughters played in the music programs in their school district, they put this thing on the bottom of the last page of every program. Music is math. And it actually is.
It is. It
That's
totally
just
is.
what
No,
you
I'm with you.
said. Now, on the other hand, when I speak to PR students, I ask most of them how they feel about math, and most of them don't like it. So we like facts, though. We do like that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So tell us about your book and the whole idea of the capital S story. Where does that come from?
So it comes from 2 decades in journalism, like you talked about. I wrote more than 10,000 stories and edited another 10,000. A lot of beginnings, middles, and ends. Some of the most horrible and amazing things that happen to people are distilled in journalistic stories. I didn't plan to go into PR. In fact, most journalists I know don't really like PR people. There's a story behind that. Ketchum, where I started my PR career, was founded in Pittsburgh. And at the time that I was editor of the Business Journal here, the man who ran the office is a guy named Larry Warner, a great guy. He's since passed away. In journalism, in the old days, when journalism was a good thing, you moved around a lot to get a job. And I didn't want to move again. The company told me they were going to promote me, move me somewhere, but they didn't know where, when. They just knew I'd be happy. Well, that wasn't really true. So I asked Larry to help me surreptitiously, quietly, because I didn't want to upset anybody. I liked my employer and everything, but I didn't really want to keep moving. And so I asked him to help me look around town for something. Called me up one day, the day the paper came out, told me he wasn't going to help me. And I'm sitting there looking at the paper, which just came out. Holy crap, what do we do to piss off the head of Ketchum PR? Larry had a real wry sense of humor. And after about 10 seconds, he said, well, aren't you going to ask me why I'm not going to help you? Okay, Larry, why not? Then he said, because I want you to come work for me. How about that? Here's something that I learned once I went over to Ketchum, which is a great place. It was like getting a master's degree in PR. A lot of PR people, they don't know how to tell a story. What a shock. Now, in journalism, you learn that there are stories and stories. The smallest stories in the old days, when people read these things called newspapers, Jody, those went on the bottom of the birdcage the next day. Now we just swipe or whatever we do when we read news on Twitter, right? The point is, those stories are, let's face it, most of the stories we do in PR, they're forgettable. Here today, gone tomorrow. But there's one story that stands above all the others, and I've dedicated my PR career to focusing on that, the capital S story, because it answers these critical questions: why somebody should buy from you, work for you, invest in you, partner with you. And if that capital S story isn't infusing your PR, your branding, your marketing, you are really selling your organization short, because that's the only story that defines the very character and nature of the organization. We've developed a trademark process to work with clients to uncover, develop, and share that story. We call it story crafting. This all led me to write the book, Finding Your Capital S Story, Why Your Story Drives Your Brand.
It is a great tale, and it is a great perspective. It's something that I talk to my clients repeatedly about. It's very easy to write the press release, to do the story of the day.
Yes.
We have to dig down into why you exist, right? And
Exactly.
I typically warn people against chasing the moose head, right? The thing you can hang on your wall.
Yes.
Great. It's in the paper today. You're going to cut it out. You're going to frame it. You're going to show it to your friends that come in your office. And in a year, it's going to get yellow. If it doesn't drive people to participate and come in
Yes.
to what you're doing, whether it's selling tickets, raising money, you name it, right? It's sort of the essence of why you exist and get out of bed in the morning. Then we're not doing the right thing. So that's great. Tell us more about the book. Sort of, you got some tips in there, or some lessons to corporations?
Absolutely. I opened the book talking about what I think is one of the greatest failures in advertising, the M&M commercial that was done for the Super Bowl. It was kind of a love song to Detroit some years ago. It was all about a car, allegedly, that no longer exists, for a company that's practically failing, called Chrysler. I can't even spell the name of the new parent company of Chrysler, Stellantis or whatever the hell it is. It sounds like some sort of a medical device. I'm sorry. I mean, I know that's a good company and I don't want to, pick on people, but let's face it, most of the people that we need to reach, the hearts and minds we need to move in our business, they don't care about this stuff as much as we do. They don't get as sexed up by all the innards of how we do what we do. It's all about results, right? And so that's not the right story that should have been told there. If you wanted to do a love song to Detroit, great. But if you did an ad that was a love song to Detroit that was really about this car, which by the way no longer exists, kind of the wrong thing, right? And that's too much of what happens in marketing and why the capital S story is so important. Now, in the old days, the people that we work for a lot of times, they thought everything we did was a bunch of foo-foo. Marketing gimmickry. It's not. Now, there are a lot of people in the business who practice marketing gimmickry, sadly, and they make life rough for the rest of us. But the truth of it is this: in the last 20 years, through MRIs and other kinds of imaging and a lot of research, we know that storytelling is hardwired in our brains. As I often say, storytelling is not only the original communications medium, it is also the only one that's 100% portable, no batteries required. Everything we do in our business, really, we think we're storytellers, and most of the time we are. Sometimes we have clients who may step on our ability to tell stories, or we might get in the weeds ourselves. But this idea of stories is biological. And I have an experiment in the book that I relate where scientists at Princeton had a young woman tell one of those classic embarrassment stories, the worst prom night ever. And they watched her brain waves, and then they put test subjects in there listening to her story. And when they did that, what they saw was that their brain waves matched her brain waves. So great storytelling, it's like dancing, Jody. It's like, the storyteller's leading and the audience is following. And it doesn't matter what the medium is. That's how storytelling works. Our work has also drawn a lot from people like Carl Jung, Joseph Campbell, the author of The Hero with a Thousand Faces, well known for creating the best known story archetype that he called the hero's journey, right? So we use all of this in our work to help our clients identify one of the hundreds of archetypes that come from 12 major archetypal families that best describes their business. That cuts through digital clutter. If I tell you I got a new client and it's a David and Goliath story, Jody, you don't have to be a biblical scholar to know it's the underdog story, okay? Then what we do is we match that with the specifics of the client organization. Far too often, what happens is we just start with features and benefits and bullets, and that ain't the story. The story is, how do I locate this organization in my mind? And then I can start to talk about the specifics.
Yeah, let's dive into that a little bit, talking about how you jumpstart that conversation with the client. Because the client typically comes in and they say one of a few things. They either say, we need to be in the fill in the media outlet, right? The New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, CNN.
I want to be on the Wall's front page.
I want to be, right. They say that, or they say, we got this big, brand new whiz bang thing. And they go on to describe it. And it's all inward looking about them.
Yeah.
And so how do you jumpstart that conversation to get them to the place where they're telling the story like you describe it?
Well, in our story crafting process, Jody, the very first meeting, we insist that the top 6 leaders of the company be in the room. That's the only time we do that. But there's a critical reason for that relates directly to what you asked. We actually give them a 1-page handout and we say, we want you to answer the questions on this page, and then we're going to get together. Guess what those questions are? Why should somebody buy from you, work for you, invest in you, partner with you? You get the CEO, the VP of marketing, the VP of HR, the CFO. They all put their answers down. Guess what, Jody? They rarely match. Exactly right, man. It's just like they're all over the map. How many times in this business, whether you work internally in an organization or you're at an agency, do you experience that, right? This is one of the biggest reasons why marketing and PR campaigns fail, because there's not agreement on the core story or message or brand, if you will. So we do this exercise. We need to have those people in the room. Two things happen. One, for the first time, perhaps the client realizes they don't need a brochure, or do they? Or they don't really need to be on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. They need to figure out who they are, right? And describe it in a way that the people that they most need to reach can grab a hold of that. And the second thing is, we're in the middle of the Great Resignation, for example. Maybe when the HR VP is talking to potential talent, they have a better idea of what the story might be than somebody else in the room. Don't we want to know what that is? And so that's how we start this process of getting the story out there on the table and starting to build the best version of it that reaches all the audiences that people need to reach.
And that is a great way to approach it. And it doesn't surprise me at all that you ask 6 people, you get 6 different answers.
Yeah.
But essential to that, and what I've always spoken with my clients about, is making sure that you're telling that story. You're sort of igniting that Campbell thing in their brain, that,
Yes.
right, that you talked about, that hero's journey thing. When you tell that story, you're also then motivating people.
Oh, absolutely.
And to miss the opportunity to have that call to action, I think, in everything
Yes.
that we do is really just the biggest fail of them all. Do you incorporate calls to action in whatever way into what you do?
Absolutely. You have a great show, and I'm honored to be on it, but we don't have enough time today to get into everything that's in the book. But a great story has 3 core elements as we define it. It's got to be authentic. You got to have a fluent storyteller, and you got to continually read the audience to make sure that they're engaged. Just very quickly, authenticity. You and I see an auto accident. I'm on one part of the intersection, you're on the other. What I saw is a little bit different than you. Does that mean you're wrong and I'm right? No, it means we have 2 perspectives. This is critical if you're an organization and you have competitors, right? You can acknowledge in today's environment where people can research everything on the internet, we're not the same as company A, we're company B. This is how we're different. So you can have your facts, if you will, that fit within the universe of the facts, and sticking to the facts, big F facts, is definitely part of authenticity. The storyteller part is this: too many clients, the CEO, that should be the spokesperson, that should be, well, if it's a healthcare organization, maybe it should be a doctor, or better, a nurse. Or you know what, if it's a tech company, you got a great CEO, but shouldn't we talk to the inventor who came up with the idea? So that's really critical, and we see that a lot of people fail there. To your point, if you say measurement inside an organization to a client, people fall asleep. Continually reading the audience to ensure they're engaged is saying, having calls to action that reach the audience you want to reach. How do you know you're reaching them? Because they're engaged. And today in a digital era, we have a million ways that we can measure how to engage our audiences, right? It's no longer like in the old days, I was on the front page of the paper, here's my clip. What did that do for me? I don't know.
We used to thud them on the desk, right? We used to print them all
Thump
out, put them in a binder, and thump.
Boom.
It's like the size of a phone book, and like, boom, there you go. There's your measurement. We don't do that anymore.
No, we sure don't. Yeah.
But there are ways to measure. I always caution clients, though, especially those who are sort of in retail or some kind of a money exchange thing, that PR is not a direct line to your cash register. You can, however, and you should be able to see that bump, that inflection point, when you get that big hit, and I think back to a client, very simple client, where I had them do a bunch of live TV hits one morning for a product that they were rolling out. They literally got off the first live hit and their phone started to ring. That's an easy way to see that bump, right? But when it's not that obvious, are there other ways that maybe people can measure, or that you recommend that people look at measurement and engagement?
Oh, absolutely. And I think there's 2 people that really in our business have nailed this, that they're thinking we've incorporated into what we do. And one is Katie Delahaye Payne, who's the queen of measurement. And one of her ideas is for PR measurement is outtakes, outputs, and outcomes. And so we are always measuring things on that 3-point scale. So an output is, did I write a press release? An outtake is, okay, that press release went out into the world, and did the messaging in that release get picked up somewhere? Social, news. And then, the outcomes is, after a period of time, usually, again, we're talking about PR, like you said, did that drive action? Are there hearts and minds that were moved? And typically what we find today, that news story, that press release or whatever, there's got to be a social component to it. Sometimes there's a paid component. And that leads me to the other guru really in this area that we follow closely, Ginny Dietrich, who's a great lady and came up with the concept of PESO, paid, earned, shared, and owned. And when we do work with clients, we'll uncover the story, we'll develop it with a plan, and then the sharing of it is always PESO.
Yeah, that's a great model, and we'll actually put a link on our social media pages to that graphic, because that graphic, that Venn diagram type graphic,
Yes.
is just spectacular.
It's
And
amazing.
in a glance, you can understand exactly what we're talking about here, and it's a wonderful model that she created. We should actually have Jeannie on the show.
I think that'd be great.
Okay. Yeah, I because she's got her own show that I am a fan of.
Yeah,
And so
it's a
maybe we
great
could
show.
do a little exchange there. That would be fun.
Yeah, that sounds great, Joey.
Well, Paul, you know what? There's so much more here that we want to talk about. I want to invite you right up front here to have you back on a second
thank you, my
edition,
friend.
because I think we can go a lot deeper than this. Where you're under a time constraint here today. So let's have you back on a future episode, and we can
Thank
dig
you,
further
Joey.
into the
I love
capital S story, because I think it's really a great learning for the folks who are listening to our podcast here. And please chime in on what we heard today, listeners, and let us know what you think about capital S story, because I think you're right on point here with the storytelling piece and the motivating action piece. It's great. What we are going to do at this point, like I said, because we are under a little time constraint, is segue right into the rapid fire question of our question portion of our podcast, where we steal a page from inside the actor studio. We ask our guests a series of rapid fire questions. Looks on your face, it looks like you've prepared for these, Paul. So here we go. Ready? Rapid fire question number 1. What is your favorite news source?
Washington Post.
All right, good one. What is their new tagline? Democracy dies in darkness.
Democracy dies in darkness. Yes.
Love that. Rapid fire
One
question.
is WAPO to the insiders.
WAPO. We have to abbreviate everything now, right?
Yes.
Rapid fire question number 2. What's your favorite social media platform?
LinkedIn. As a
LinkedIn.
friend of mine said, LinkedIn is where the adults hang out on social media.
There we go. Rapid fire question number 3. Coffee or alcohol?
Coffee all day long, sometimes too much.
Yeah, definitely too much. Definitely too much for me. Rapid fire question number 4. What is your favorite on the run food? You're a former reporter. You know all the good spots.
Well, it has to be handheld. And this is going to sound weird, but I've eaten breakfast sandwiches at the wrong time of day, just because you can be driving around town going from point A to point B, and you're not going to make yourself look bad by spilling a bunch of crap on yourself.
There you go. You get it where you can take it, right?
Right.
It's the truth. You got eat now, because you never know if you're going to be able to eat later. That's the reporter.
Burritos are not good for that test. I have experience with that.
Oh man. Okay. So we definitely need to have you back now, because we got to hear that story. And rapid fire question number 5. What do you want to be after you finish this career?
An adult.
No, why? I'm a Toys R Us kid, man. I'm never growing up.
Well,
Never,
yeah, so
ever,
am I.
ever.
So honestly, writing and music, I think my wife's after me. I have, my dad used to play the accordion. Now my dad's accordion. My wife is like, what are you going to do with that? I'm like, I'm going to learn to play it. She's like, who wants to hear the accordion? I don't know, frankly, but I'm going to find out.
There you go. A good test of a marriage.
Exactly.
Well, Paul, this has been a great conversation. Please let people know how they can find you online.
Great. WordWritePR.com. So word like you speak, right? Like what you do with a pen, PR for public relations.com. And my email address is my first name dot my last name at wordwritepr.com.
Wonderful. Thanks again, Paul. And thank you everyone for listening. Please remember to subscribe to the show, connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at The PR Podcast, and send us a question or a comment. Our intro is by Christopher Apple. You can find him and his fantastic photography on Instagram at Christopher_APPOLDT. Check him out there and hire him for all your photography needs. You can find me online at Jody Fisher on all the socials and on the web at jodyfisherpr.com. We'll see you next time on the PR Podcast.